Island medium. Theresa Caputo recently spoke live to the current wife of her ex-husband, Larry Caputo. During the conversation, she told Theresa how badly Larry was treating her and how ruthlessly he was suppressing her. Theresa then calmly replied, "Don't worry, sister. I'm on your side. You sue Larry, and the court will do him justice." It was a crisp autumn evening in Long Island, and the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the curtains of Theresa Caputo's living room. Despite the warmth in the room, there was a tension in the air, a heaviness that Theresa felt in her heart. She had just received a message that made her pause. Her ex-husband, Larry Caputo, was in the news again. Not for himself, but because his current wife had reached out to Theresa, sharing a burden that weighed heavily on her. Theresa settled into her chair, the familiar hum of her home surrounding her. Her eyes closed for a moment as she breathed deeply, sensing the energy in the message she had received. She could feel it almost immediately. Fear, frustration, and sadness, all mixed with an urgent plea for understanding and justice. Theresa had always believed that her purpose was to bring light where there was darkness, to give voice to those whose hearts were silently breaking. And tonight, that calling had come knocking once again. A few minutes later, her phone rang. On the other side of the line was a soft, trembling voice. It was the current wife of Larry Caputo. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, but when she finally did, the words tumbled out in a torrent of pain. She spoke of days filled with fear, nights filled with anxiety, and moments where she had felt completely silenced. He doesn't let me speak," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I feel trapped, and nobody knows the truth." Theresa listened, her heart aching with empathy. She had experienced the complexities of relationships firsthand, and while her journey with Larry had long ended, she understood the weight of betrayal, manipulation, and control. She could hear the trembling courage in the woman's voice, the courage it took to reach out to someone who had once been her husband's partner. After a moment of silence, Theresa spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with reassurance, like a lighthouse in a storm. "Don't worry, sister," she said softly. "I'm on your side. You don't have to face this alone. You have the right to be heard. You have the right to justice. Sue him, and the court will do what's fair. But above all, protect yourself, protect your spirit, and know that you are not alone." On the other end of the line, the woman's voice wavered, and then a soft sigh of relief escaped her lips. It was the release of someone who had been carrying a heavy weight alone for too long. Theresa's words weren't just legal advice, they were validation, acknowledgement, and the first step toward reclaiming her power. Theresa closed her eyes and focused. In her mind's eye, she could see the energy surrounding Larry's wife. Chains of fear and doubt slowly dissolving under the warmth of understanding and support. She whispered a prayer for courage, strength, and clarity to fill her heart. She could feel the change already. A lightness began to seep in, small at first, then growing, until the woman on the other side of the line was able to speak with more confidence, her voice steadier, her words firmer. You really mean that?" she asked quietly. Theresa smiled softly. "I do. I know the truth of what you're going through, and you don't have to hide it. No one should ever have to feel suppressed or silenced in their own life. Stand tall, sister. The world will listen to you, and the law will listen too. But most importantly, trust yourself." The conversation lingered, filled with shared understanding and quiet strength. Theresa guided her through steps to seek help, to document her experiences, and to prepare for the difficult path ahead. She reminded her that the journey toward justice was rarely easy, but it was always worth it. After the call ended, Theresa sat in the quiet of her living room, her hands folded over her heart. She reflected on the strange twists life had brought, how someone she had once loved could cause pain, how bridges could burn, and yet how the human spirit could still reach across the void to offer support and light. In the days that followed, Larry's wife began to take action. She filed the necessary documents with the court, seeking protection and fairness, but she did so with newfound courage and strength. And though she knew the road ahead would be challenging, she carried with her the assurance that she was not alone, that somewhere across the waves of her past, Theresa Caputo was standing beside her, her words like a shield of hope. For Theresa, it was another reminder of why she did what she did. The world was full of invisible struggles, hidden stories, and silent cries for help. And while she could not change the past, she could illuminate the present. She could give voice to the voiceless and courage to the fearful. She could remind people that no matter how dark their path seemed, light could always be found, sometimes in unexpected places, sometimes from the most unexpected people. And that night, as she looked out at the stars twinkling over Long Island, Theresa whispered a quiet blessing for Larry's wife, a blessing of protection, justice, and freedom. For in the end, the power of compassion, the strength of truth, and the courage to stand up for oneself were forces stronger than any darkness. And somewhere across the distance, a heart that had once been silenced began to beat a little louder, a little freer, and a little braver, because someone believed in her, and sometimes that was all it took to change everything. However, the late afternoon sun cast soft golden lines across the carpet of Theresa Caputo's reading room as she prepared for her next appointment. She didn't usually read clients twice in such a short time, especially young clients. But this case was different. Ever since she had met the boy named Eli 2 months earlier, she had felt a lingering tug in her chest, a heaviness, a feeling that something about his story still wasn't finished. Eli was just 16, tall for his age, with quiet brown eyes that looked older than his years. When they first met, he was trembling with grief. His older brother Noah had passed away in a sudden car accident just a year earlier. Their bond had been unbreakable. Noah had practically helped raise him when their single mother worked night shifts at the hospital. Losing him shattered Eli's world. Theresa had given him a reading then, but even as she remembered it, she felt that the messages hadn't fully settled. She had helped her share of grieving families, but this boy, this sweet, broken teenager, stayed in her heart. Today, as she adjusted the candles on the small white table, she whispered to herself, "Spirit isn't finished with him yet." A gentle knock at the door broke her thoughts. Eli stepped in with his mother, Julia, who looked both nervous and hopeful. Eli wasn't trembling this time, but Theresa could see the weight behind his eyes, the questions, the hurt he still carried like a shadow. "Hi, sweetheart," Theresa greeted him warmly, hugging him with the kind of embrace only a mother could give. "I'm really glad you came back." Eli nodded shyly. "Last time helped, but I still feel like Noah's trying to say something. I feel it at night sometimes, like he's close, but I can't understand." Theresa smiled gently. "Then we're gonna get to the bottom of that." They settled in. Theresa closed her eyes, grounding herself, letting the familiar tingling sensation begin in her palms. The room dropped into a deep, comforting silence. Suddenly, swiftly, she inhaled. "He's here," she whispered. Eli looked up, startled. "I feel a young male energy, late teens or early 20s. He steps forward fast, like he's been waiting impatiently." Theresa touched her chest. "He's showing me how protective he was over you, almost like a third parent." Eli's eyes welled. "That's Noah." Theresa nodded. "Sweetheart, he's also telling me something new today, something he didn't bring up last time." She paused, listening to the invisible presence. Her tone softened. "He says you're blaming yourself again." Eli froze. His mother inhaled sharply. Theresa looked him straight in the eyes. "You think if you had asked him not to go out that night, he would still be alive?" Tears rolled down Eli's cheeks instantly. "I begged him not to go. I told him the roads were bad, but he said it would be fine, and then... Theresa reached over, holding his hand. "Noah is saying very clearly, stop. It wasn't your fault. He keeps repeating that." She closed her eyes again. "He's showing me the road, the rain, the bend. He says it was no one's doing, not yours, not his, not anyone's. It was an accident, one that couldn't have been prevented by you." Eli sobbed into both hands. Julia quietly cried behind him. But Theresa continued, because the energy was strong. "He's also telling me that you've stopped playing guitar." Eli looked up abruptly. "How did I didn't tell—" "Noah says the guitar was your connection. He says you think playing it is betraying him because the two of you used to practice together." Eli swallowed hard. "Yeah, I can't touch it. It reminds me of him too much." Theresa felt her hands warm again. "Noah is insisting that you pick it up again. He says the music is where he'll talk to you the clearest. That's where he'll visit." Theresa gasped lightly as if receiving something stronger. He's also bringing up a song you used to play together, a slow one. Something about home. Eli's head dropped. His shoulders shook. Take me home, he whispered. It was our favorite. Julia whispered through her tears. Noah sang that to him every birthday. Theresa nodded. That's the song he wants you to start with again. He says, play it. I'll be there. The air in the room felt thick, warm, comforting. But Spirit wasn't done. Theresa suddenly felt pressure in her chest, a sign she often felt when someone on the other side wanted to say something emotional and deeply personal. He's saying he never got to tell you this before he passed, Theresa said softly, so he wants to say it now. The room fell completely still. He says, you're going to be okay, Eli, and I'm proud of who you're becoming. He says, you weren't just my brother, you were my best friend. Eli broke completely, sobbing as he leaned forward, his voice cracking. I miss him so much. Theresa placed both hands on his, grounding him. He knows. And he's not gone? Not the way you think. You don't stop loving someone because they pass. You just learn to love them differently. The candles flickered. He's stepping back now, Theresa said quietly, but he's smiling. He's lighter. He feels relieved because you finally heard everything he needed to say. She inhaled one last time. And he wants you to know he'll be with you when you play that song tonight. The room softened. The energy faded. Eli wiped his tears. He looked tired but lighter, like a piece of the crushing weight he had carried for a year had finally lifted. Thank you, he whispered. I feel like I can breathe again. Theresa hugged him tightly. That's why Spirit brought you back. He wasn't done helping you. As Eli and his mother walked out, the sun had already dipped behind the trees, leaving a violet glow outside Theresa's window. She watched them go, feeling grateful. Sometimes Spirit worked in one session. Sometimes it took two. And sometimes, like today, it took a second meeting to finally bring a young heart the closure it desperately needed. However, the sun had barely set over Long Island when the production vans rolled into the quiet street in Hicksville. The evening breeze carried the faint smell of fresh-cut grass, and the neighborhood seemed impossibly calm, almost too calm for what was about to unfold inside Theresa Caputo's home. This was the first official filming day for Raising Spirits, Theresa's newest series with Lifetime, and although Theresa had spent years on television, this project felt different, more intimate, more raw, and even more spiritually demanding. Inside the house, Theresa adjusted her signature blonde hair in the hallway mirror. Holy crap, you'd think after all these years my hair would be used to the humidity, she muttered with a laugh, teasing herself as she sprayed another generous layer of hairspray. Behind her, the production crew chuckled. They were already used to her energy. But on this night, Theresa wasn't preparing for an ordinary reading. She was preparing for one of the most emotionally difficult sessions she had ever agreed to. Waiting in the living room was the Rodriguez family, 3 siblings and their mother, Elena. The air carried a heavy tension. Each of them sat stiff, hands folded tightly, as if they were collectively holding their breath. Theresa stepped into the room. Immediately she felt it. A presence. The energy in the air shifted, thickening around her like a warm blanket. Theresa swallowed, knowing the spirit wasn't a timid visitor. Whoever had come tonight was determined, aching, to speak. Hi, everyone, Theresa greeted softly, her voice warm. I know today isn't easy, and I want you to know I'm honored to be doing this with you. Elena wiped her eyes before they could spill tears. We've been waiting a long time, she whispered. Theresa nodded knowingly. Your loved ones have been waiting too. Before she even had a chance to sit, her body jolted, like a soft electric pulse had pushed through her back. Okay, this is interesting, Theresa breathed. I have a young male stepping forward already. Very strong energy, very eager, almost like he's been shouting at me all day to get this going. The youngest Rodriguez sibling, Anna, gasped. Her hands trembled. That's my brother, she whispered. It has to be. Theresa closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sensations wash over her. He tells me he passed suddenly. And you weren't prepared. He keeps saying, tell them it wasn't their fault. Over and over, he won't stop. Elena covered her mouth. a sob escaping before she could hold it in. "My son, Carlos," she said. "He was only 20. We thought he was getting better, and then, just like that, we lost him." Theresa inhaled sharply. "I'm getting the feeling of a breath that stops suddenly, like struggling for air but trying to stay strong. Does that make sense?" The middle brother, Marco, nodded with his head down. "He had a rare respiratory condition. Doctors said he would have years. His voice cracked. "We thought we had time." Carlos's presence grew stronger, almost pushing at Theresa's shoulders. She felt an intense pressure in her chest. "He says, stop blaming yourselves. Stop thinking you missed something. I wasn't alone. I wasn't scared." Anna broke then, years of tension spilling from her small frame. "I should have checked on him earlier that day," she cried. "I always think about that." Theresa gently touched her hand. "He says, no. Stop. You loved me more than enough. You saved me more times than you know. He's hugging you right now, like squeezing the life out of me to get it to you." Anna laughed through her tears. "That's exactly how he hugged." Suddenly, an intense warmth wrapped around Theresa's back. "I need to talk to Mom," Theresa said, her eyes softening. Elena looked up, clutching a small silver locket around her neck. Inside it was a tiny photo of Carlos as a baby. "He's saying, 'Mom, you still talk to me every night. I hear you.' But he's telling me you sit alone in your bedroom, and you think you failed him as a mother." Elena burst into sobs. "Every night, I apologize to him." Theresa reached out. "He says, 'Mom, stop saying sorry. I chose you. You were perfect for me.' And he's showing me a birthday cake. Are birthdays really big in your family?" Elena looked shocked through her tears. "I bake a cake for him every year, even now." Theresa smiled gently. "He sees it every single year, and he says, 'Mom, you better keep doing that. I love chocolate frosting.'" The whole room erupted in emotional laughter. "But something else was coming through." Theresa's voice softened. "He tells me he left you with a promise he never got to fulfill." Marco's eyes widened. "His last words to me were, 'We'll take that road trip next month. We planned it since we were kids.'" Theresa nodded. "He's taking me in a car, laughing, windows down, blasting music. He says, 'Bro, take that trip anyway. And when you do, I'll be your passenger.'" The room's temperature dropped suddenly, not frighteningly, but noticeably, like cool wind had brushed past the back of their necks. Theresa knew what that meant. "He's showing me a feather, white, drifting down slowly. Did any of you find a feather somewhere unusual recently?" Elena froze. "Yes, 2 days ago, in Carlos's room. I thought it was impossible." "That feather was from him," Theresa said firmly. "A sign that he hasn't missed a single moment. You didn't lose him, you simply lost the ability to see him." The Rodriguez family wept together, releasing years of pain they had carried like a silent burden. As Carlos's spirit slowly faded back, Theresa felt the energy lighten, as if the air had finally exhaled after being held for too long. "He wants one last thing," Theresa whispered. "He says, 'Tell them I'm free.' And he wants you all to be free too." However, the rain had been coming down in heavy sheets all afternoon in Long Island. The gray sky pressed low over the streets, and everything felt muted, the kind of weather Theresa Caputo always joked made spirit activity a little extra chatty. But this particular Wednesday, Theresa wasn't scheduled for any clients. She planned to visit her daughter Victoria and then head out for some errands. She did not expect her life to take a turn literally and spiritually that same afternoon. Theresa was driving down Merrick Road, humming along to an old 80s playlist, when her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. She ignored it, keeping her hands on the wheel, because Larry always told her, "Trey, you drive like a crazy woman even without texting." But as she approached an intersection, a flash of movement caught her eye. A young man, maybe mid-20s, dashed across the street, trying to beat the changing light. A car swerved to avoid him and hit the brakes. Theresa instinctively turned to avoid the sudden stop ahead. The impact wasn't massive, but enough to shake her, enough to crumple her bumper, enough to make her heart leap into her throat. The other driver, a woman in her early 40s, stumbled out of her SUV, shaken but uninjured. Theresa rushed out too, I'm so sorry, Theresa exclaimed, rain soaking into her hair. Oh my God, are you okay? I'm so sorry, I didn't even see. It's okay, the woman breathed, holding her chest. I'm not hurt, just startled. But as she spoke, something changed in the air. Theresa felt it. That familiar shift, that tingling in her scalp, that heaviness in her chest that wasn't from fear but from spirit. She swallowed. Ma'am, what's your name? Emily, the woman said, still trembling. Emily Carter. And in that very moment, a young man appeared beside her to Theresa, at least. Spirit. Tall, skinny, hoodie, early 20s, rain dripping through him as if he were transparent. He looked directly at Theresa. Aunt Em, tell her I'm okay, he said quietly. Tell her it wasn't her fault. Theresa's breath caught. Not now, she thought. Not during a car accident, not like this. But Spirit doesn't care about timing. While the police took notes, Theresa kept glancing at the young spirit standing behind Emily. He paced, as if frustrated that his aunt couldn't see him. When the officers finally left, Theresa took a deep breath. Emily, I need to tell you something, and please, please take this the right way. Emily frowned. What do you mean? Theresa stepped closer, voice soft. I'm a medium. I talk to spirit. And I think someone is here for you. Emily's face went pale. Right now? Yes, and Theresa swallowed. He came through the moment we collided. Emily blinked rapidly as if trying to fight tears. Who is it? Theresa closed her eyes. He's young, early 20s, hoodie, hands in his pockets. He keeps rubbing the back of his neck like he's nervous. He passed suddenly, unexpectedly. Emily began to cry. That's my nephew, Jason. Theresa nodded. He's saying, Aunt Em, stop blaming yourself. Does that make sense? Emily's knees buckled and she leaned against the car. Theresa, I've never forgiven myself. He lived with me after his mom died. I was supposed to pick him up from his friend's house the night of the accident. Her voice cracked. He took an Uber instead, and the car crashed. He died instantly. Jason's spirit moved closer, kneeling beside his aunt though she couldn't see him. Theresa's voice softened, cracking a little. He's telling me you need to stop replaying that night. He says you were his safe space, his second mom, his home. Emily sobbed, covering her mouth. And he's laughing, Theresa continued. He says you used to chase him around the house yelling, take your shoes off or I'll smack you with one. Emily let out a choked laugh. Oh my God. I did. All the time. Jason's spirit smiled shyly. As the rain began to lighten, the air warmed with emotion. Theresa wasn't thinking about the accident anymore. Her car could be fixed. But this woman's heart, that needed something more. He's showing me a necklace, Theresa said. Silver chain, small blue stone. Emily gasped. That's the necklace he gave me for Christmas. The last one before he passed. He says you stopped wearing it. Emily wiped her eyes. I couldn't. It hurt too much. Theresa reached out and held her trembling hand. He wants you to wear it again, not to remind you of the pain, but to remind you of the love. Emily sobbed harder, but this time with relief. And one more thing, Theresa whispered. He says this accident today, it wasn't a coincidence. Emily blinked. What? He says you've been asking for a sign, begging for one, asking him to speak to you. Somehow. Theresa squeezed her hand. He says, Aunt Em, here I am. Emily put both hands over her face and cried deeply, her whole body shaking with years of grief being released. Water dripped from the trees. The clouds parted just enough for a warm strip of sunlight to break through. Jason's spirit stepped back, looking more peaceful now, his edges glowing slightly as if light was pulling him home. He's telling me, Theresa said softly, that you can finally let go, that he's safe, that he's with his mom, and that the guilt was never yours. Emily looked up at the sky, whispering, I love you, Jason. Theresa felt the shift the moment spirit gently faded away. Jason smiled at her, mouthed, "Thank you," and vanished. After a long moment of silence, Emily finally looked at Theresa. "You know," Emily said, wiping tears, "you apologized for hitting my car, but honestly, this might have been the only way I would have stopped long enough to hear him." Theresa laughed softly. "Still, I'm really sorry about the bumper." Emily laughed through tears. "Don't be. Today, you gave me something I've been praying for years." They exchanged insurance details, hugged like old friends, and parted with hearts lighter than when the day began. Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.